Check 1 2. Check 1 2. 1 2.
currently closed. Right now, that's scheduled to be until April 13th. We meet every week. My guess is that we'll get together probably on Monday to make the determination if that date will be extended. Staff continues to work remotely, and we can process all requests. We're processing sanitary sewer lateral requests, which are required for home sales. We're processing everything that we receive. And we have posted on the website contact information and phone numbers so people can call in to get their questions, complaints, what have you, addressed. This is, as you had said, Supervisor Weiss, the first meeting where we've had this remote meeting. We have reserved this to be done on April 15th, and then in both May meetings if necessary. A couple of other updates. So the township is aware, and the board will be getting updated reports from me. We announced yesterday that we have waived all late fees and penalties associated with 2020 sewer bills up to and including the third quarter bill. So that would be for residents' bill that they just received that has a May 24th deadline date. That would include the bill that they would get later in the summer, and then the bill that would be due in late September or October. So for anybody in need, we'll certainly work with anybody that has issues, but our hope is right off the bat to waive those late fees. We are in the midst of examining a variety of other things, including what we intend to do with the township pool. Staff will be meeting in the next day or two to give the recommendation to the board regarding the possibility of whether it can be opened at all, whether it would be a partial opening, or whether or not the pool will have to be closed this year. This will be communicated within the next week. In the interest of watching our bottom line, we're not hiring summer workers for the park. We're not hiring summer workers for public works. And the full-time staff will be handling all those responsibilities over the course of this year. We have instituted protocols for staff regarding how they can get to the site. Only one person can be in each vehicle, things for their own protection and for the public's protection. We will not be hiring the full-time park and recreation employee that we budgeted to do this year. We did budget for 3 pieces of equipment in a fund called our Road Machinery Fund. It will be the intent of staff to present to the board a scaled back recommendation to only purchase 1 piece of equipment this year, and that be one that has to do with our salting and plowing season for a piece that has to be replaced. Finally, I have repurposed 2 staff members. We're now calling senior citizen households. We have lists of about 335 households. That's part of the Police Senior Partnership Program. I think the chief and I are extremely proud of the expansion of this program. We have 2 full-time staff people who are calling every senior household every week, and we'll repeat that for as long as this goes on. We've encountered households of seniors who are running low on food or need their medicine refilled, who are concerned about leaving the house. For those that we're particularly concerned about, we will do a wellness check with the police department with them. For anybody watching, if you have someone that you're concerned about, even if they're not a senior citizen, if they're special needs or have special circumstances, we'd encourage you. We have it listed on the website, but you could call 267-274-1101 or email cholmes, HOLMES, @lmt.org with their name and address and phone number. We will and make sure that we check on them at least once a week. So that's what I have for now, unless there's some specific question you'd like me to address.
Thank you, Kurt. You do raise up a point. Today, there's been a lot of traffic on social media about the sewer bills and the appropriateness of our rate increase. So I would like to ask our solicitor, Dave Truelove, to comment on the background and the appropriateness of for the board raising our rates the way we was done.
Can you hear me, Mr. Weiss?
Sir.
Okay. Yes, in 2006, there was a lease agreement, which is a successor agreement to one before, between the authority and the township. And to cut to the chase, essentially, the authority has been an advisory board, for lack of a better term, than a true authority since its inception. And the lease agreement in 2006 completely vests the township itself with the right to set rates and charges on the system. And this is also reflected in the fact that, for example, any employees who work for the sewer authority are actually paid by the township. Any financing that's done, that's been done over the years has been done by the township, not by the authority. So this is just a reflection of the fact that the township itself has taken over and has for years. This is not a recent event. The actual operation and the responsibility, which includes setting the rates and charges. Now, the authority is involved frequently in advising and reviewing a lot of the operations, including the charges, but they do not have the final say. They never have. They have been informed. They've always been informed at the meetings. In fact, this is part of the budget discussion last year, as it has been every year. But in terms of whether or not these rates were passed illegally, that's just not accurate. And I would also add that I know that there was a lot of sticker shock today for a lot of people, including in my house. But this was something that was discussed frequently in the last year, if not the last 2 years. And the authority was also part of those discussions as well. So,
Thank you,
hopefully
David.
that answers your question.
I think it has. Thank you very much. Next item of business is community announcements.
Dr. Weiss, can I say something, ask a question about the sewer rates?
Of course.
Thank you. Kurt, can you hear me? Sorry, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, given the situation that we're in, and I don't know how many projects we're able to do this year based on the idea that the governor has shut down a lot of road projects and a lot of other, I'll say just generally infrastructure projects, while others are allowed to move forward. Do we have any idea as to what sewer projects that were planned for this year we can move forward with? And if I'll ask two questions back to back. And if we know that, are we able to reassess our current sewer budget this year to see if there is an opportunity to reduce the overall percentage, because we won't be able to complete all those projects this year and then reassess for next year?
Well, some of those projects are contributions that we make to MMA, which is a fixed cost, which I won't say is fixed cost, is based on their capital projects, which are pretty much set every year. A good portion of that budget, about $5 million, is to pay for treatment that we have budgeted for. We have a pump station project that's underway that we literally are all the way to getting easements and having everything ready to go and have that bid ready to go. So that would be on the street literally as soon as we're able to move forward. The other parts of the project, parts of the budget that we would be moving on this year would be sewer lining. So, we have already targeted certain areas that we know we've been presented to both to the sewer authority, to the subcommittee, to the board, that we would target. So in the end, I still think we could proceed with those things. Frankly, I would be of the assumption then that if some of that stuff carried over, we would, I don't want to say double the efforts, but then we would pick up to do additional work next year to stay on schedule. I mean, as a reminder, the plan to line the pipes is essentially one that's going to take 62 years to get done. As was presented to the board during the budget, I still have concerns whether or not DEP is going to accept that as a reasonable time frame to begin with. So the thought internally was that we get those things ready to go, with the idea that we would do the lining later this summer and the fall. And if that carries over, so for example, if we bid in the fall and that work carries over, we'll just have to carry that over and then conduct another project in 2021 as well.
Kurt, by the next meeting, do you think you could have a sort of an estimate of what we think the revised project spend would be on the sewer projects and the status on each one?
Well, there's not many projects per se. There's sewer lining. And then there's the project, this year's the projects include sewer lining, and it includes the pump station project that's well underway, that is in fact, part of it, in fact, funded by a grant. So in the end, I don't know that there's much to revise. You know, if the board is of the inclination that we hold off on sewer lining, then that would be a decision of the board. I'm proceeding as if that lining will take place, and we'll just be bidding it later in the year. If you're asking me to run a project cost, so for example, we have certain projects, as an example, with Memorial Park, with that are not part of the sewer fund, Memorial Park, and even the trails, that are a lot more cut and dry and have, as far as our ability to move forward on those reasonably. The sewer projects, I mean, if you're asking me to look to see, to analyze whether those can go forward or not, I mean, I'm happy to sit and still discuss that, but it's still going to be a discussion on some unknowns as far as timing of when things let up.
Any other questions? Okay, next order of business will be a public announcements. I don't have any on the agenda. However, if any of the supervisors have an announcement to make, this is the time. Just raise your hand, you'll be recognized.
Chairman Moise, I can't raise my hand because I'm not on the screen. However, I do want to announce, I got an email, I think we all did this week, from a resident, Jennifer Sullivan, who had sent out a flyer basically indicating that St. Ignatius was taking donations for anybody that was being affected by the virus. I do have the information, the address for St. Ignatius Church. The rectory is 999 Reading Avenue, Yardley, PA, 19067. And then there's also a number for Ms. Sullivan at 215-369-9262 if anybody's interested in taking up that cause.
To add to that, if you're looking for something on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, St. Ignatius, I believe, is partnering with Neighbor in Need, and there's a Neighbor in Need Facebook page that provides that same information if you're following on Facebook.
There's some public comment on the sewer, if you would like to take that.
Sure. Is the caller online?
We're going to bring them in right now.
Hello, caller. Just announce your name and give your address, please.
Sure. Michael Taylor, 1116 Daffodil Drive, Yardley, PA.
Hi, Michael. Go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. I know that you guys just mentioned about the sewer bill, and I think it's great too that you guys have done the kind of pause on the payments and everything. I mean, that's totally unrelated to this, but I know, you know, someone mentioned it was kind of a sticker shock with the bill. I would call it more of an April Fool's joke here. You know, that when I got that sewer bill today. So did you guys know that it was going to be 37% increase?
I'll take that. Yes, in our budget meetings at the end of last year, this was discussed. Our township manager gave a very in-depth presentation of the need for the increase, and the board actually approved the rate increase in December of 2019.
I think from a resident standpoint is like, listen, I understand costs go up, but I think it just needs to be, you know, where else do we absorb that at? And I just wish there would have been other alternative means to try to offset that cost. You know, I think there's opportunities in the township that could have been better than just literally passing on a 37%. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I did not get a 37% increase in a raise last year. I would have loved to, but I, you know, maybe you guys did, but I just think that is really an egregious amount just to pass on at one time and not expect you're not going to get backlash from it.
I totally understand. One of the I guess disadvantages of a small community, as well as one of the advantages, is that we have to be in this together. Our bills are all the same as everybody else's, and when the costs go up as they do. You know, it seems like it's only fair that the ratepayers, the customers, pay the bill. It's difficult to find, you know, in the financial condition we're in, to find other ways to pay for these increased costs. I think we all feel the pain of the increased bill. Each and every member of the board and the members of the staff that live in the township, and we're still looking at ways that in the future will mitigate future rate increases and get us back on track.
Is there any opportunity, again, I know this isn't the forum to just rattle off the ideas that could change the cash flow, but, you know, trash hauling, for example, doing a corporate bid on that and getting someone to do that, that could easily be reduced trash by 50% and offset. So like I said, I'm just throwing out ways, and if there's a different meeting I can attend to do that, I'll be more than happy to come in and throw at least 3 ideas that I think that could have been other than just passing it on.
We'll save that for a later time. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Hearing no other further public announcements, we will go to the next item of business, which will be to consider the approval of the March 4th minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 4th, 2020.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Suzanne and second from Daniel. If there's no further comment, we'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, March the 4th, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Meetings are approved, 5-0. And we'll now have the treasurer's report. Supervisor Blondie.
Make a motion to approve the warrants list for March 2nd, 2020 and March 16th, 2020 in the amount of $761,481.26.
I'll second.
We have a second from Dan, Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion on the warrants? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 5-0, it passes.
I make a motion to approve the February interfund transfers and payrolls for 2020 in the amount of $662,902.84.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for the interfund transfers. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Please, when you say aye, also raise your hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Passes 5-0. Next item of business will be the engineer's report. Mr. Pockell.
Yes, hello supervisors. You have in your pocket or packet, maybe your packet's in your pocket. In your packet, my engineer's report. And before I get to the highlights of that, I just want to go through the agenda item. We are recommending approval of the escrow release number 8 to Prime Custom Builders in the amount of $48,414.20. Upon release of this escrow, there will be a retainage in the amount of $68,935.61. The work out there this is the Estates of Sandy Run. The work out there is completed. The only thing that they're really waiting on is the notice of termination of their permit for the storm. It's basically Bucks County Conservation District signing off on the stormwater management system. We've reviewed it. We've reviewed the basin. We've reviewed the pipes, the inlets, all of the other site work, which the road is a cul-de-sac. It's not going to be dedicated to the township. So, but even still, the work is done. I checked the street lights myself. Street lights are working. So really the amount that we're retaining is well in excess of anything that might come up within the spring that they would have to address. So again, we're recommending approval of escrow release number 8, the Prime Custom Builders, in the amount of $48,414.20.
So moved.
There's a motion made. Will anybody entertain a second?
Second.
There's a second to the motion. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll raise my hand. Literally, I guess. Sorry, I just want to make sure you see me. Andy, since we're waiting on Bucks County, they're going to review all this same stuff. Is there any real push to release that until we get Bucks County to sign off on the same information?
Well, they made the request approximately 30 days ago. We have to act on it within 45 days. So realistically, I don't know that we have any standing on rejecting it. The amount we've signed off on the work is completed. Like I said, we're still retaining $68,000 and change, almost $69,000. So that would cover anything that Bucks County would reject if they were to. So yeah, that's why we're recommending.
Okay. Well, it's good that we know that there's a 30-day or 45-day requirement.
Yes.
As we wait for Bucks County. Thanks.
Well, let me be clear. The 45, we as the township, as the board, you have to act on it within 45 days of them making the request. They made the request. I think the 45-day deadline is April 10th. So they've made the request in early March, and we're processing it here at this meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any public comment?
No comments at this time, but we can open up to public comment if you like, Fred.
Sure. At this time, we'll open up the public comment.
Okay, in order to call in for public comment, you can dial the number 646-558-8656, and the ID is 948-762-116#. It's also shown on the screen. We're just going to give a minute for public comment. I'm seeing no comment.
Thank you, Monica. We'll call the question. All those in favor of releasing the escrow signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? James, are you there?
Yes, I was an aye.
5-0, escrow is released. Thank you.
So moving on to some of the other work that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. After the governor issued his shutdown order, we went around to all of the current construction projects and talked with the site supervisor, and we issued items that they have to address, items that they had to address immediately in order for public safety. They completed that work, and to my knowledge, all of the construction projects within the township are currently closed, shut down, with the exception of the Caddis development. Because they're a health care facility, they are proceeding, and they are exempt from the governor's shutdown order. We also received a request from Light Bridge Academy project. That is on the north side of Big Oak Road, across from Regency South, next to the Yardley Woods development. There's a doctor's office in there. They are currently doing work to add a driveway entrance, and that is, they're requesting work for that to be completed as well. Mr. Majewski was out there today and issued an email to me on the work that they could complete that would fall under the exemption versus work that is under the daycare side of the project and they cannot complete. So we'll be issuing that to the contractor tomorrow. In addition to that, we are going around and checking on all of the erosion and sediment control measures after the major storm events like we experienced earlier in this week. We were out checking all the construction sites that were closed down that might have had some erosion and sediment control measures that were failing, or so we're inspecting that just after major storm events. We're not routinely checking it, but after major storm events, and other than that, we opened bids for the bike path on March 26th. We are still currently evaluating where we are with the bike path project, and we'll be talking with staff concerning that and where we stand with that. So that's all I have. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any comments, Supervisor Grenier?
Yeah, Andy, I know it's still early in the construction season, but one of the things that we're not allowed to do right now is road work. So I'm just curious, and Kurt, this may be for you too, what our road program looks like for the foreseeable future, given our current circumstance.
Okay, so the road program, we have received the contracts from the contractor. They signed them, returned them to us. We submitted them to the township. I believe Kurt received them. I'm not sure though. I didn't confirm. But at the same time, once Kurt signs off on the contracts, then we can meet with the contractor for a pre-construction meeting and issue a notice to proceed, have them get their paperwork completed, the submittals of material that they're going to use, and we'll review that. So there are things that we can do in advance of them actually going out on site. But at this point, I've talked with the contractor, Morrissey, James D. Morrissey. They are open. They've got a lot of other work where it falls under the governor's exemption order. So they said that they could be ready to have a pre-construction meeting this week, as early as this week, or they could be, if we want to delay it, we can too.
Is that something that we could apply for the exemption? Any ideas?
Well, there's two things. There's an exemption, which the governor already ruled on. It's this work is exempt. Then there's a waiver where contractors can request a waiver from the stop work order, and that's a form that the contractor fills out, submits, and then the state rules on it.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Thank you, Andy. Next order of business will be the project updates. You have before you a synopsis of what's going on in the township. Is there any questions or comments about these projects on the agenda? Supervisor Grenier.
Sorry, it's quicker than raising the hand on the screen. Sorry. Kurt, getting back to what comment you made earlier when we were not the sewers, but when we were talking about the sewers, there's a lot of projects that we're looking at this year that, you know, we're still early in the construction season, right? So there may be a chance to proceed with some of these. I'm curious if you have your finger on the pulse at this point, or if you not quite yet, as to which projects that are on this list or others that may get shifted, or we may need to come up with a mitigation approach to address the projects, if any.
Yes, there will have to be something put in place. As I had indicated, you know, we're looking at what our programming is going to be for Park and Rec this year, including the pool, including summer camps, and a variety of things. We have staff that we're still using that has part of their salary, part of their benefits, even part of their pension contributions that come, for example, out of the pool. If we decide not to open the pool this year, I've internally worked all the numbers out. In the end, that would result in about $500,000 that we would have to offset. I've already sat with the Park and Rec director for extended periods of time. And as an example, we have the Memorial Park project. Last year, we set aside our $250,000 match that we set in a recreation capital reserve fund. The grant itself doesn't expire until December of 2021. I've asked our township engineer to approach the Commonwealth to ask if they would be willing to extend that to 2022, with the idea that if to offset some of these expenses from loss of revenue, that we could pull that match money, that $250,000, back into the Park and Rec fund to offset those staff expenses attributed to the pool. The other item that we have looked at as well is the trail plan. I'm sorry, the trail project for this year. There was $25,000 budgeted for that out of Park and Rec as well, that depending on what we decide with the pool, there would be a report going to the board regarding how I believe we can offset those costs, at least on those two projects, not to eliminate them, but those are direct costs that we would have to offset, that there's no other means by which to do it, you know, closing the pool, as an example, if we have to do that, it takes 2 months to open the pool. We have about 180 people that we hire. Our options there are limited if that ends up being the choice. So that report, I imagine, along with a recommendation on the pool, will be forthcoming to the board probably by about next week at this time. If there's any other questions about projects or not.
Not hearing any, I guess we'll go forward. The next item of business will be the manager's report. So, Mr. Ferguson.
In your pack, you have.
Hold on. Mr. Lewis, you have something that.
Yeah, can we provide a short update on Sandy Run for folks? Now, I understand we received RFPs for the design engineer. What steps can be taken now, given the governor's order, while we're waiting for that? Will this put us out of our timeline?
No, I had provided the board an update today regarding those bids and some questions about some of the one of the particular filing requirements in the RFP. Depending on how that is decided, the design work is essentially, you know, not construction. So that design work, which will take a period of time that we outlined, could be completed. Now, if the governor's instruction in the end is that construction can't take place for the rest of the year, then obviously it would influence it. But we will be able to take this all the way up to and including finalizing the design, making a public presentation on that design that we've talked about, short of and even creating the bid documents that could go out for the construction. It's just going to be whether or not we can pull the trigger on that construction bid going out. But right now, there's not anything that's happened right now that takes us off that time frame.
And on the timeline, when do we have to select the design engineer?
I have to look. I don't have it in front of me, but I think the way we had outlined it was that it would be selected at either this meeting or the next meeting on April 15th. Is that all the questions?
Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
So you have in your packet a memo from our Public Works Director, Greg Hucklebridge. Every year we participate in consortium bidding for road materials. This doesn't obligate us to have to purchase things. It's just bid out by the consortium. So if and when we go out, which we're optimistic we will, I still have staff out working under controlled circumstances. So for the public would ask this, if something's going on, that there was a safety issue with a pothole or something that needed to be repaired, we could in fact go out and do that. But I am asking for the board to consider approving the asphalt and stone materials bids award as bid through the consortium for 2020 and 2021.
Anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the bid for asphalt and stone materials through the Bucks County Consortium for 20 and 2021.
Supervisor Blondie made the motion. Anybody care to make a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Lewis seconded the motion.
With a quick question before a vote. Do we expect asphalt prices to decline significantly? And will that be reflected if we need to make purchases later in the summer?
Well, our primary asphalt purchase that we would have would actually be through the road program where we got bids already.
Stuck on that, yeah.
Most of what this is for stone, and this does set the price. So I don't necessarily expect the prices will go up. Gas prices are going to be going down dramatically. So I've not heard any word that we should be concerned that these prices would be subject to change.
Any other comments? Monica will open up the public comment at this time.
Okay, we can open it up to public comment. Please call the number on your screen. It should pop up momentarily. Give another moment for public comment. We have a caller in about 30 seconds. They'll be in. Okay, our caller Stephen is coming in right now.
Good evening, Stephen. Can you give your full name and address before you make your comment?
We're still patching him through. Yes, he's in.
Hello, Stephen. Can you give your full name and address before you give your comment?
Sure. It's Stephen Severino, 1374 Revere Road in Yardley. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thanks. What's your comment?
Excellent. Just a question on the Sandy Run. So, you know, we haven't had access to that for the past, I guess, 2 or 3 years. Versus, I guess, spending the $800,000 or whatever it might cost in this. Have we looked at just holding off on this entirely, since it is a temporary solution, and since we are kind of in a rough situation here between obviously everything that's going on, and obviously some of the other situations with the financial issues across the town? Why invest in this now? Why don't we just hold off for another? We've waited this long. There's really no urgency to put this temporary solution in. That's not going to really fix the problem.
Stephen, you raise a good point. However, this is a comment on the motion before us about approving the road bid, the asphalt and stone. I would ask you to call back in a few minutes during non-agenda public comment, and we can address that a little better.
You got it. Thank you.
Any other public comment, Monica?
Okay, we can move on.
Thank you. Having no further comment, we'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the bids for the road project, stone and asphalt, signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Seems like we have 5-0. Go get that stone and asphalt, sir.
Chair Weiss, do you mind if I bring up one thing? I'm not sure it's sitting here on the agenda. I have a lot of paperwork in front of me, but Chief Coluzzi is obviously part of this meeting, and one of the items that we had discussed was bringing up and approving the emergency declaration that has been done. I don't know, Chief, if you want to talk about that for a bit.
Sure, Kurt. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for bringing up the Police Senior Partnership Program. As you know, I'm very proud of that program, and we have over 300 some seniors, and the help that you provided us worked out fantastic. And we're going through the list quickly, and there are some in need. But anyone in the township, not just a senior, but anyone in need, please contact the police department. We'll get somebody out, and we'll get you whatever you need. So the declaration of disaster emergency was prepared on March 15th, and it was prepared in conjunction with the President's order and Governor Wolf's declaration of emergency. I would ask tonight that the Board of Supervisors ratify the existing declaration of emergency and keep that emergency in existence or to run concurrent with the governor's order, or until there's no more threat in our township. Now, everybody knows the reason for a declaration of emergency, obviously to recoup funding and cost and expense related to COVID-19, but it also allows us to do things we normally wouldn't be able to do legally. So it's a very important piece of paperwork. It was great that we got that out. It's now in the hands of our county and our state and FEMA, and we want to keep it in existence as long as we need it.
Mr. Chair, I move
that
we continue the emergency order until such time needs to be removed.
Second.
We have a motion made by Supervisor Lewis, a second by Supervisor Blondie, to continue the declaration, to ratify and to continue the declaration of emergency until such time as the president or governor or the threat is removed. Is there any comment by the board? Hearing none, I guess we should open it up to public comment.
No public comment on this agenda item.
Thank you, Monica. Hearing no further comment, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
5-0. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. Next item on the agenda is our solicitor's report. So, Mr. Truelove, the floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Mr. Chairman. First, we did have an executive session. It was conducted beginning at 6:30. All members of the board were participating in this meeting, participated in the executive session, as did Mr. Ferguson, myself, outside counsel, and financial advisors. Items related to real estate and confidential items were discussed at the executive session, which concluded just about, around 7:30, right before this virtual meeting convened. Under my solicitor's report specifically, is to consider adoption of ordinance number 422, amending the responsible contract ordinance, which appears, I believe, in chapter 99 of our township code. It's been properly advertised. To kind of cut to the chase, it amends the ordinance two ways. It changes the language for internal review by professionals of bids and information that's submitted using responsible contract ordinance requirements, from where it says a minimum of 30 days to a maximum of 30 days. This was generated primarily because of numerous experiences with the ordinance where there really seemed to be excess time for everyone internally to have to deal with reviewing the information, because most of the information was readily available for most of the contractors who were submitting information that was subject to the review. The second part is for public review. And this is something Mr. Majewski specifically requested because it was in his experience that the 21 days that was normally, that was stated in the ordinance really was, again, rather excessive compared to what the practical circumstances were. So under the circumstances, he recommended, and we included in the ordinance as part of the change in the amendment, reducing it from 21 to 14 days. So again, you have two parts, internal review and public review, and those are the two parts that were discussed previously, were properly advertised, and now they're referred before the board to consider voting on tonight. So a motion would be appropriate if you're so inclined.
So would anyone like to make such a motion?
Make a motion to consider adoption of ordinance number 422, amending the reasonable contractors ordinance.
Make a motion to consider, or making a motion to approve?
Thank you. Approve.
Does anyone want to second the motion?
I will second.
Supervisor McCartney has seconded the motion. Do we have any discussion with the board? Mr. Grenier.
You moved on my screen, Fred. Sorry, I lost your face there for a second. I believe, just for sake of history here, the motion that was made at our February 19th, 2020 meeting was limited to changing it up to 30 days. There was no mention of changing the 21 to 14 days. Quite honestly, at the last meeting, I didn't know that we changed that part. I was looking at something else, I guess, when that was described. So I apologize for that. Personally, I'm okay with changing it to up to 30 days because I think that provides a significant amount of time, and as well as a significant, it doesn't put too much pressure on township staff to review it too quickly, but it still provides a fair amount of time for others too. I am not in favor of changing it, revising down from 21 down to 14 days, just because there's a lot of things that go on in the township where things just can't get done in 14 days, and we've all experienced that. I think it's important that we keep it at 21. That's my comment on this.
Is there any discussion from the board?
The primary reason for the drafting was to give us the flexibility in cases where we needed to move quickly. I'm okay with the 21 days if as a driver, so I'm flexible with that if we wanted to make that amendment. Would that change the anything that would be of issue for us, Solicitor Truliff?
We would have to re-advertise in that circumstance, because that would be considered a substantive change. Although it would not be an amendment anymore, but since it's been advertised as an amendment, we'd have to re-advertise where it'd only be the one change that would be included. So it's up to the board how you want to do that.
Supervisor, I mean, I don't know why I always want to make you a supervisor, Dave, but Dave, you indicated that Jim Majewski had commented on that section. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was his specific input. He had input on the other part too, but he commented specifically by email and otherwise that was his, in his experience, his preference. You know, I don't recall. I'm sure I had a conversation with him about it. I don't recall the specifics, but the essence of it, as I recall, is that they found that the time for the public to review was, if anybody's really interested in the public, it's usually other contractors. So, and they will come to look at it within a shorter period of time generally. So, that was his rationale, as I recall. If he's watching, he might be able to offer some input via text or some other way, but that's my recollection, at least at this point.
If I could also weigh in, I think part of the question as well was that 21-day time frame, depending. I know that there are meetings that could take 3 weeks, or we have several times a year that there's 3 weeks. But with that 21-day period, depending on when it falls, in and of itself can become 30 plus days as well. I think the point that was discussed amongst staff and at the time was, remember, when we do this review, there's two processes. There's going to be the process to review, and then the process where the board is going to actually sign the agreements to push that forward. So in the end, we still could hold off if a resident raised a concern from signing that agreement until it was resolved, because that's not a staff signature, that's a board signature and a board approval as well. That would in and of itself give the opportunity to hold off longer if a resident raises a legitimate concern that needs to be investigated.
Supervisor Blundy, would you entertain an amendment to your an amendment to your motion to change the public inspection period from 14 days back to the original 21 days?
You're not persuaded by that? Yes, I would. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Bowman.
I accept Dan's amendment.
There's an amendment.
So if I can make it, so this is to retain the current language with the 21-day public review period. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my request.
Okay. To be safe, I think that is a substantive change, even though we're not changing it, but it's a substantive change to what we advertise. So I think to be safe, we should probably then just re-advertise just the one change. I want to make sure that if there's any, I don't want to have any challenges to the ordinance. So if that's the case, then what I suggest is we defer this to a later meeting to allow us to advertise it after tonight, and then it should be ready for the April 15th meeting. I think that would be that should be very easy to do. So we can do that. So I guess we just you'd have to authorize us then to advertise the amendment to Chapter 99 only to include the first changing the language from a minimum of 30 days to a maximum, and that would be the only change. If that's what the board is intent on doing.
Dave, do we actually want to have some kind of vote first? Because Dan
Yes.
didn't.
Yeah. That's what you want. I guess that's what I'm suggesting. You then move to have us advertise the amendment as indicated with the.
I'm not sure that everyone agrees with the amendment yet. I mean, I've agreed to accept Dan's amendment.
First, we need an agreement from the seconder. I think that was Supervisor McCartney.
Yeah, I still second that.
Okay, so the amended motion is just to approve the first part of the amended ordinance, and not the second. So change the wording to up to 30 days for the first part and retain 21 days. As our solicitor has said, that is a substantive change, so that we'll need to re-advertise. At this point, do we need to vote since we've?
You want to vote on the amended motion now, just to retain just the one change, and then have, if that passes, then have another vote to authorize us to re-advertise with that one change. So there'll be two parts.
Hearing none, I'll accept public comment at this time.
Okay. There is no comment on this particular item. Going to public comment?
Hearing no public comment, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. I will entertain a motion now to advertise the amending of the ordinance to 21 days.
No, no, you're not amending that, because that's the current status. You're just, you'd be authorizing to advertise the one change to the ordinance, which would be to change the language from a minimum of 30 days to a maximum of 30 days. This is for the internal review.
I understand.
I'll make that motion. So I'll make a motion to advertise ordinance 422 with the single change in item number 2, changing it from at least to no later than 30 days.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Lewis. Any further comment by the board? Any further public comment?
Move to call the question.
They're checking if there's public comment. There's no public comment.
Hearing no public comment, all those in favor of advertising signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 5-0. We'll advertise the new amendment.
Okay, thank you. We'll get on that in the next couple of days. Next, the zoning hearing board matter. There's one matter before you. John Goods, and I'm sure I'll be botching these names, and Felice Fiscano are requesting a variance for property located at 312 Sally Road in order to permit construction of an in-ground pool resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. In their application, they've indicated their desire to include stormwater management techniques to offset the increase in impervious surface ratio. We did confirm that this is not in a flood zone. So generally, if they're in a flood zone, we usually participate. If they're not in a flood zone, generally we defer to the zoning hearing board, as the zoning hearing board has tremendous experience in addressing these issues. Our recommendation is to defer, but we'll throw it to the board if you want to defer. There's no vote required. If you want to participate, we would have to take a vote.
I say we defer.
I'd actually like to participate. I'm looking at the FEMA flood maps now. They are mapped within a 500-year floodplain, which is now referred to as the 0.2% chance versus the 0.1, which is the 100-year, with a floodway elevation that goes through their neighborhood. So I don't know what the topographic elevation is of the specific home, but there's a chance that they would be that this could impact the floodplain.
So you want to make that motion, Mr. Grenier, to have us participate?
Sure. I'll motion to participate in the zoning hearing board review of the Goods and Fascano variance request for 312 Saley Road.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Supervisor Grenier and a second by Supervisor Lewis to participate in this zoning issue. Is there any comment by the board? Hearing none, is there any public comment?
There's no public comment on this topic.
Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of participating signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
We will participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Finally, at least for me tonight, at least until we get later in the meeting perhaps, two matters under zoning inspections and planning. Two extension requests. First is to consider the grant of an extension of the Dogwood Drive development to April 30th, 2020. That would require a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion made by Supervisor Blundy and a second made by Supervisor McCartney to extend. Any comment?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
I'm ready to vote aye.
Any public comment?
No public comment on this topic.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The other matter is consider accepting a grant of extension of the Capstone Terrace development to December 31st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
The motion made by Supervisor Grenier and a second by Supervisor Blundy. Any public comment? Hearing none, the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We shall extend.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Trulove. At this point, we'll now open the phone lines for public comment. Anyone wishing to make a comment on the non-agenda items may do so at this time.
We'll go ahead and put the number on the screen. You can call in at this time. Okay, we have our first caller, Gregory.
Hello, Gregory. Give your full name and address and make your comment.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gregory Eggert. I live at 561 Keswick Drive, Yardley, PA. I had a question for, I guess, the board and then for the chief of police regarding the emergency ordinance that you guys passed. I tried to call through, couldn't get through that easily. What new powers would the township and the chief of police have that he didn't have before? Because he commented that otherwise it was illegal, I guess, without the ordinance going through. So just trying to get clarification of what they have now that they didn't before.
Did everyone hear me?
Chief, it's yours.
Okay. Well, this meeting is the first thing that we're doing that we would not ordinarily do if there wasn't a disaster declaration issued. Other areas of the emergency declaration is cost and expenses. Township's going to incur a great deal of expenses as a result of the COVID-19 virus. So we would be able to petition PEMA to recoup and be reimbursed for some of those expenses. As far as what the township is able to do legally, keeping parks closed, trying to separate people who are gathering, businesses and that are non-compliant, things like that that we would not ordinarily do as a police department. We now have the authority and the power to enforce.
If I could add, to the chair, if I could add in as well, one of the other items that declaration addresses is if and when funding becomes available, it is that emergency declaration that will allow us to apply for reimbursement for these various expenses, overtime, extra equipment that we have to purchase, any issue related to this that we would be eligible for reimbursement from the federal government for.
Thank you, Gregory.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Next caller is Zach.
Zach, give your full name and address, please, before you make your comment.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. Can you hear me?
Sir.
Yeah. I'd like to commend the board and the township's manager for providing this format to reach the public. Since the meeting has started, since I'm at home, I was able to have dinner, shower, and start the novel War and Peace by the time public comment came about. So again, thank you for providing the opportunity.
You're welcome, Zach. Any other public comment, Monica?
Yes, we're going to patch Stephen through.
Stephen, I think we have your name, and it's Stephen Severino. You can proceed with your comments. Stephen, are you there?
Stephen appears to be muted on the screen.
Can we get Stephen unmuted?
Stephen, are you muted on your screen?
If I recall, this question had to do with Sandy Run and the necessity for
He's
going
now
through that
unmuted.
project now.
Can you guys hear me?
Hear you now, Stephen. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah? All right. So you got Stephen Severino, 1374 Revere Road. That's why I had it muted before when I spoke and wasn't an issue. So thank you guys for doing this. This is great. Just a comment on the Sandy Run. Has there been consideration, or will there be consideration to put this on hold, considering Sandy Run hasn't been used in 2 or 3 years, and there really isn't an urgency to get on Sandy Run right now? And we could potentially save that $800,000 that obviously we could probably use within the town based on the current financial situation.
Kurt, go ahead.
I'm happy to start the answer here. So obviously any decision to curb the project itself would be to the board. However, at least as has been discussed, the project has been described as an interim measure, with the idea that if you've seen the presentation, that 2 roundabouts would be created, one at Schuyler and one at Mill, with the idea that that would serve as a traffic calming measure for speeds that are too high to allow us to open the road as it is. And it would also only allow right in and right out only, with the idea that if we can get the speeds down low enough, that a more comprehensive road opening, meaning the left ins and left outs, could be allowed. The challenge with it is putting this project off for doing the broader project in the future. It would be an indeterminate amount of time. I think the estimates right now that our traffic engineer are looking at would be the broader opening, which would involve raising Sandy Run Road higher to change the sight line, curving down the hill coming off the train tracks, would be somewhere between $7 and $10 million. So while ultimately the board would make the decision on the merit of that project, this was seen as a way by which to get the road open and see if this less expensive version would suffice, that if right in and right out is enough, that gets traffic moving and people become used to it, and then possibly with the idea of reopening it to have left ins and left out only. So again, I just don't want there to be the misperception that somehow if we put this off, we can do the bigger version, the big $7 to $10 million project in the next couple of years. That would be a much longer horizon that frankly could result in that road staying closed for probably, say, 5 to 10 more years, in my opinion.
Anybody else?
So obviously stuff has changed, I guess, within the last few months. Obviously, now that we've revealed that, we're not in a very strong financial position as a township, and obviously there's some global issues going on as well. So that I thought that would potentially move us to obviously not spending this kind of money on a temporary solution.
Again, I'm the manager here, so I understand your point. That would be a discussion if the board would want to have on the merits of continuing on based upon what you had said.
That is definitely something. Supervisor Rayner.
Yeah, Kurt, and this is something, Mr. Severino, is sort of along those lines, but more of a global comment than I think Kurt is more aware, or township manager is more aware of this than really anyone is, because he's looking at the projects and our finances literally every day. As we make our way through this health and, as it were now, a financial crisis that's going on. And Kurt, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I know you're reviewing literally every aspect of the township's finances right now, or projects and otherwise, to make recommendations, determinations, et cetera, as to things that may need to be put on hold, schedules that may need to be changed, other items that, for example, if the pool doesn't get open, how we address those, the golf course, et cetera, how we address those financial items, and how best to do that. And I don't want to say everything's on the table, but we have to figure out how to do that. And if this is in his analysis, which you can't do overnight, if this is something that we need to potentially readdress, I'm open to doing that, but I still want to get the road open. So.
Well, obviously, yes, I'm spending every day looking at the situation. We are in a bit of a different situation, our township, compared to many of our neighbors. Many of our neighbors are struggling with getting their hands around what the financial impact would be, because they have an earned income tax. And that earned income tax is a volatile tax that can change dramatically, especially if we see layoffs that are anticipated. The township's tax base here is driven much more specifically on property taxes primarily. Not that those could be impacted, but roughly 55% of taxpayers in Lower Makefield have their taxes escrowed, meaning it's been collected for the past year before this happened, for the most part, and those payments will come in. The volatile taxes that we do have to be concerned about is that we did budget about $1.3 million for real estate transfer taxes, which is the half of 1% that we get on each property sale. This past year, I believe we had about 550 property sales in 2019. January and February this year were decent months on average of what we would expect, but we'll have to see where that number comes out. So, if that number is impacted by 50%, that is $500,000 or $600,000. We will need to figure out where we offset those expenses. I think the park and rec expenses that I've mentioned already in regards to the pool, and we're not going to be hiring, and we're scaling back other capital expenses like equipment will certainly help. And there will be a broader discussion that I will have the board regarding measuring that impact and what those options would be to address it. So I'm not prepared to do that this evening. However, I'm going to be coming up with sort of ranges of impact that we believe we can see and what that translates to. So as an example, the RFP that Supervisor Lewis was just discussing is for April 15th. This is an important project, and it's been discussed in the town for a number of years. And I think that there are those that are anxious to see that road reopened. And we'll have to evaluate all those options that I will be getting to the board soon. And I would say I'd like to have at least the first pass of that prior to or as part of the April 15th meeting.
Stephen, thank you very much for your comments.
Next caller is Richard, where we're going to patch him right through.
Hello, Richard. Can you give your full name and address and make your comment, please?
Yeah, Richard Garnier, Homestead Drive, Yardley, PA. Am I on? No, okay. Sorry, I'm watching the TV. I guess there's a delay. You mentioned that the COVID-19 is costing us money, and I kind of have two questions. And I don't know if you were talking about on the Sandy Run thing, but how is the COVID-19 costing Lower Makefield Township money? And if it is costing money, well, I mean, can you just let it go? I mean, well, and then my other question is, why can't you, like every other private industry, cutting their costs? What are you doing to cut costs right now? And one, you could cut costs like just put a breakaway train on Sandy Run Road so an ambulance can get through, and just leave the road closed. We get along fine without it. But so my questions are, what can you do to cut costs? And what exactly is costing more with the COVID-19? Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, Richard. Kurt, do you want to respond?
Sure, I can respond, and if necessary, I'll pull the chief in as well. So obviously some of these costs that come in, first there's cost the other way. There's revenue that's cost to the township if economic activity is decreased. But if you're talking specifically about what costs increase, there would be costs associated with overtime that's necessary in particular. So for example, we've had to put in measures by which we disinfect properties in the township building and the police quarters. That's overtime based. It's not a staggering cost, but it's an increased cost. We have certain costs that we'll have with the police department regarding extra protections they have to take to calls. We're going to have to sit and be less efficient, quite frankly, with how I engage our public works staff, as an example, where I put in standards that I can only have one person per truck at all times. And a lot of the work that needs to be done where we'd have 3 and 4 people doing the work, I'm not going to be, at least for the short term, to be able to do that. I can't give you a specific measure about how all of those costs will be because we're just gearing up to start tracking those expenses now. The bigger cost or loss that we're going to be faced with is going to be regarding economic activity. And at least at this point, what are we doing to cut costs? One, the contemplation, as I said, regarding the pool, that pool is, and the reason the pool is challenging is that pool is self-sustaining. So we need all of the members that we have to pay for the costs, and it's about $1 million. So if and some of the costs that we have are assigned to the pool. So I have staff time that's assigned to the pool that does other things in the township. So what are we doing to reduce those negative numbers? We're talking about scaling back, not purchasing equipment. We're not hiring any summer workers to help mow the parks. The full-time staff will be handling that. We're not going to be hiring full workers to work in the basins and to do the other work that assists with the public works department. Those full-time guys will do that. We're looking at possibly holding off on projects like whether it's the trail plan or the memorial park plan that will be presented to the board, that we're looking at all of these things. We do continue to work remotely. Frankly, the staff that we have now is very lean. So it's not like we have a lot of excess. The police are at ideal capacity to handle the calls that are coming in. I only have 11 public works employees for 130 miles of roads. We have 1 building inspector, 1 code enforcement officer, 1 or 2 secretaries. So the goal here is to get them engaged to keep doing everything that we've been doing because we are lean. So we will continue to look for those savings, and that'll continue to be a point of discussion as we go forward.
Thank you, Kurt. Mike, is there any other public comment?
I think we're going to go ahead and put the number back up, let people call in, and after a couple minutes, we'll move on.
Maybe next time we should have music on hold.
I'm willing to sing.
Maybe a little Irish dancing.
Just can't move your arms.
I do have jazz on the background here. I could turn it up for everybody.
We know we're live. We think we're funny.
Any further public comment, Monica?
No further public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business, discussion items. We have one discussion item right now. It's regarding the face value collection for property taxes being extended from June 30th to July 30th. I know that the county commissioners have already made that decision. However, it might be wise, it might be prudent to discuss the Pennsylvania Association of Tax Collectors recommendation that we agreed to extend to December 30th. So if any of the supervisors wish to comment on this possibility.
May I bring up one thing?
Development.
So I just forwarded an email. One of the area managers had sent out an email that I sent that I got today. That the county commissioners, the message I had sent you originally was the commissioners were considering extending that period from the face period from June 30th to July 31st. Then they put the word out that they were contemplating taking that all the way to December 31st. They've now scaled back the willingness, at least the expressed willingness at this point, to do that back to July 31st. Now, the reason that becomes relevant is, you know, as you're aware, the county bill and the municipal tax bill are on the same bill. So the ability to have layered dates becomes much more complicated as far as how a tax collector would be able to manage that. So the most recent word is that the county is contemplating at an upcoming meeting passing, and it would have to be soon, obviously, passing a resolution to extend the face period from June 30th to July 31st. And that any such legislation, they would, the Bucks County, the Managers Consortium and Bacado would make that resolution available to the board if we wanted to participate along with the county to have that collection to July 31st.
So I guess then the discussion would be to participate in this resolution.
So I think that's the discussion as far as what the board thinks about that. I think what they will be distributing would be a standardized resolution that, you know, that we could participate in. Once they pass the resolution to do that, then they would ask if there are Bucks County municipalities that would like to pass that resolution on with them, so the tax collectors would have in those towns would have the same due date for both of those taxes, so it could be implemented. So I don't know how the board feels about extending it. However, I'd suggest at this point you have the discussion. We wait to see that the county passes it. We get the standardized resolution, and then maybe we shoot for the April 15th meeting if they move that quick, or at worst, depending on when they're done, the first meeting in May, which I believe is the 3rd.
Yeah, I would strongly support following the county's lead on extending the penalty period. And I think it was a smart move. And remember, folks who are looking for the 2% discount can still get that before April 30th. So if they're able to do that, they should definitely do that. Well, it does potentially add some cash flow issues. Again, many, as you've mentioned previously, Kurt, many of our residents pay through escrow, and those are already on track and on schedule. So,
but you are right, Supervisor Lewis. What that essentially does is it gives the resident an extra 30 days before that bill would kick over into a penalty phase. It would give them 30 days extra under that face amount value.
Any other comment by the board? So unless there's an objection, we can go ahead and follow the county's lead and see where it leads.
Fred, can I ask a question? Is there any benefit potential that we could, or is there a movement, I should say, amongst other townships to try and convince the county to go even later than that, given the situation? Or is this, do you think this is the longest time period we can get?
If I look at the email that I just got, I think that the county was concerned about the unpredictability or the differing amounts that may affect local governments with them more comfortable on July 31st. But so that's a discussion you all can have with your county commissioners. I think the biggest issue they had was or concern was tax collectors having different dates on the same bill, that they would have a difficult time managing that. So I think in the end, it might have been some of the feedback that they got were from towns that were concerned going to December 31st would be difficult for them. And so they settled on July 31st. But that's a discussion I think you all can have with the county commissioners to see what insights they have or thoughts they have, where they've landed. They've not passed anything yet. So,
yeah. My personal opinion is I'd like, given the situation we're in, extend it as long as we can in line with the county, which is what we're all talking about anyway, to give the maximum benefit to our taxpayers. If the county can extend it, there's obviously a reason they can or can't, and following them is a good idea. It's just good to understand what our options might be, in my personal opinion.
I think we're all in agreement to whatever we can do to help residents with this crisis, and ease the burden ever so slightly would be a great thing. At this point, I guess there's really nothing to do other than wait for the county commissioners to make a decision.
I believe the county had a meeting today. They usually have the same dates that we do. So we could, we could contact the county just to see if tomorrow morning, to see if they did do something today, and then they have a model resolution, get that down in plenty of time before April 15th. If in fact that's what they did.
maybe we can send a letter to the commissioners saying that we support the longest delay possible before initiating penalties on property taxes.
I think that's a good idea.
That's a very good idea.
Okay, why don't we do that then? Thanks. Next item of business will be the supervisor reports. I'll go in alphabetical order. Supervisor Bundy.
I'm sorry, but none of our committees had a chance to meet because of COVID, so.
Supervisor Grenier.
Yep, very quickly. Just a reminder that none of my committees have met recently, but just a reminder that several of our committees have one or more openings can be found under lmt.org, the governments tab under boards and commissions. And anyone that's interested can send an email to our township manager, kurtf@lmt.org. My one committee that has opening at the moment is the sewer authority. We have one opening. And actually, I'm sorry, the electricity reliability committee actually has 3 potential openings right now.
Supervisor Lewis.
Yeah, so none of my committees are meeting. However, the zoning hearing board is working through issues about potentially providing remote meeting access to address concerns where possible with property owners who need to make repairs or need zoning variances. So at this time, the next meeting scheduled for the 7th has obviously been canceled. However, there is discussions about how a meeting similar to this meeting could be done for zoning hearing board. And much like this meeting, it benefits from active public participation with neighbors coming in into the discussion as well. So I will keep you posted if there's a resolution on that. The solicitor for the zoning hearing board is reviewing that. So thank you.
And Supervisor McCartney.
No updates at this time.
I also have no report to make at this time. Is there any other business before the board that needs to be discussed?
Did we lose Fred? Oh.
There being no other business, I will adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll meet like this, if not in person, on April the 15th.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Stay safe and well.